In this video, I'm going to show you how I drew this gardenia flower with leaves using colored pencils. While I'm drawing, I'm going to give you some of my best tips for drawing white flowers on white paper. For this drawing, I am working with Prismacolor and Polychromos pencils on Legion Stonehenge paper, and I'm blending the pencils using Utrecht Nude Odorless Paint Thinner. I used to think that drawing white flowers was so hard and I typically just avoided it, but eventually I discovered the secret, which is simply to draw the shadows. So obviously you can't just use a white colored pencil to fill in the petals because it won't show up against the white paper. So instead, look at the shadows and start blocking them in, which is what I'm doing here. Keep in mind that the shadows can be various colors. Here I'm working with light gray pencils around the edges of the flower and warmer bronze colors toward the center. Sometimes white flowers will have shadows that appear green, pink, purple, cream, or yellow even. So you just need to try to identify the colors you're seeing in the shadows and go from there. When I'm drawing white flowers, I like to work really tentatively at first and just build up the layers slowly. I try to be careful not to go too dark too soon. That said, oftentimes the shadows need to be surprisingly dark, so don't be afraid to add a darker value when needed. A range of values will give shape to your flower and help it stand out. I used a few different gray pencils here. I used Polychromos Warm Gray 1, 2, and 3. I also used a Polychromos Cold Gray 1. And I used Prismacolor Warm Gray 10% and 20%. In the center of the flower, I blended in some of those grays along with Prismacolor Bronze and Seashell Pink to add those warmer bronzy colors. Here I'm just working around the flower like I said earlier, just slowly building up those darks. And now I'm adding a layer of the white Prismacolor pencil over almost everything here just to smooth these colors together, making for some nice transitions. And now I'm starting to blend everything out with solvent. Started off here using a paintbrush, and then you're going to see me switch over to these cotton buds. These have a point, and I felt like I was able to really get the pencil nice and dissolved better with these cotton buds in this particular case. I also like that the cotton bud stays nice and clean. So I'm just going back and forth. You can use whatever tools you prefer to blend, but the process basically involves dipping your paintbrush or your cotton bud into the solvent, dabbing it off on a washcloth to dry it off a little bit, and then you just come in and go over everything, just really trying to dissolve the pigment in the pencils to get rid of any graininess that you might see in your drawing. And then after I've finished that process, I always let things dry for about 15 minutes before I come in and add my second layers. You can see me now starting to work through with this Polychromos Raw Umber to really darken the values around the center, and that's what I was mentioning earlier. I started off a lot lighter, and after I blended with solvent and stepped away, I realized I want to go quite a bit darker with this, really to make that center pop. And then I just needed to work back and forth with some of my lighter colors to make sure everything transitioned really nicely, and that's where you can see me using that Prismacolor Seashell Pink. And in these second layers, you are going to see me start to come in and darken things up quite a bit, especially around the edges of the petals. Really needed to give some shape. I didn't want this to be just one value. And I think once it's finished with the leaves and everything drawn in, it's still going to seem like a white flower. I like to layer back and forth with my different pencils, making sure that I have really nice transitions. I feel like this smooth blending when it comes to working with colored pencils is one of the most important things to learn or to pay attention to in order to make things look nice and realistic. So blending, transitioning, overlapping, layering, those are all skills that you can practice and get better and better at. And a lot of times it just comes down to giving it the time that it needs in order to make everything look good. I'm blending once more through with my white Prismacolor. And a light layer of solvent just to blend things out one more time, soften everything up. You can blend back and forth between your solvent and your pencils as often as you need to. Here I'm starting to work on the leaves, and one of the things you can do to really make your white flowers shine is to have a lot of contrast in the drawing. I really love the composition of this one because these dark green leaves contrast so nicely against the white. And to draw these leaves, I started off by outlining them and then using this embossing tool to indent the paper where I wanted the veins to go. Then when I go over the indented areas with a soft layer of colored pencil, the pigment won't stick in the indented space and it makes the veins really stand out. Then I can easily see the various sections of my leaf, making it really easy to draw at that point. And I'm starting here by layering my darkest color, which is a dark gray. I'm using either a dark gray or a black there, and then coming over with some lighter greens. I was using earth green yellowish from Polychromos and kelp green from Prismacolor. If you've got a dark gray or a black pencil, then a mid-tone color and then a brighter color, you can really get by with using very few colors. When I blend over with the solvent, you're going to see that I can tone down those veins quite a bit so that they look a lot more natural. You might be thinking, oh, you're erasing all of that work you did by indenting the paper, and I'm really not. You're going to be able to see those veins through the layers of pencil, but they're going to look a lot more natural. You can preserve the look of those really sharp lines if you want to by just blending around them, and sometimes you'll see me do that. I like to use a sharp polychromos pencil to go around all of my edges to really sharpen things up. I don't like to have messy edges or anything grainy around the edges. And you can also see me just really darkening those shadows, and that was partly because I did want a lot of contrast here. And then blending over again with that earth green yellowish from Polychromos. That's one of my favorite greens if you're working with botanicals and you want some really natural looking greens. Earth green yellowish and May green from Polychromos are two really great pencils that you can purchase even open stock. You don't have to buy an entire set of Polychromos to get those colors, but they are definitely two of my go-tos. Using my white Prismacolor pencil to brighten up that center line that runs straight down the leaf. Wanted that to stand out more. Here I'm using an electric eraser to pull up some bits of pencil, especially around the highlights. That's another one of my essential tools, and I like to use that technique particularly on leaves. It really helps them look a lot more realistic. And finishing up this drawing by working on this little bud. Again, this helps with the composition, just to offset and give a pop of the green up on the opposite side here. And once all the leaves are drawn in, then I can look back to the flower and adjust the values here. And working over it one more time just to once again sharpen things up and darken around the center here. Anytime you see me do an outline like that, you're going to also see me come around the edge to smooth around that outline and blend it out so that it looks like a shadow rather than an outline. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments and I will be happy to answer those. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Bye everybody.